Okay, today I'm going to talk a little bit about recipes. I mean freeze drying recipes. Now, I don't mean, as I've mentioned before, how many cups of this and how many teaspoons of that. That's not the kind of recipe we're talking about here. We're talking about a process recipe. That means the series of steps that a machine goes through from the beginning to the end to give you what you want. So you can't really control that on Harvest Rights or Blue Alpines or Stay Freshes. You can only control a couple of parameters. That can matter. So if you want to try to get a little bit more performance out of your machine, the ones you have, you'll contact me. I can actually help you set those parameters so that you maybe can get a little bit faster process cycle and while maintaining quality. It is definitely possible with those machines. What a process recipe though does for you is it allows you to tweak the steps that the machine takes, the parameters that are set inside the machine while it's running, so that you can adjust its performance for different products. For example, it's going to take a different process recipe to do liver than it is to do chicken. It's going to take a different recipe to do apples than it does to do mangoes. And it's certainly going to be different to do mushrooms from just about anything else. If you want to do some kind of liquid like aloe vera or some kind of slurry, maybe cow's blood for pet treats, that kind of thing. Every one of these things is going to require a different recipe. Will a standard recipe work rather for a whole bunch of different things? Yes. Is it optimal? It's okay for home use. If you are doing production and every single minute of production matters, meaning how fast you can get product through your machine really matters, then you definitely want to take the time to at least think about and tweak your recipe. Now, you can do this yourself. It doesn't take some kind of guru, that has years of experience in freeze drying to make a recipe for you or to tweak it the way you want. But what it takes is kind of an understanding of what's going on in the freeze dryer with regard to the product and the physics that's going on in the freeze dryer. And that's what I've spent my last, 5 years really thinking about a lot and working with customers a lot on. So if you have a machine that you want to make run faster, reach out to me. If you want a machine that is geared to run faster, that is much more capable of being adjusted with regard to process recipes, and not only that, but the data that it logs every minute during every cycle, you can plot out. Here's an example, right? So you can see what's going on in this machine at any given time. You can see where it's ramping up. You can see where the temperature is falling. You can see where sublimation is in full swing. You can see here that power is high and that pressure is relatively high. You can also then start to detect when your machine leaves the sublimation phase. That is to say, what everyone calls the first phase is sublimation phase, right? I don't like to call it, as I mentioned before, first phase and second phase, because that is just super descriptive, right? First and second. I mean, how much more information do you need? No, it's what's going on in that phase, right? So it's sublimation that's taking place in that phase. So I call it the sublimation phase. and then you transition into the desorption phase. Instead of phase 2, I call it desorption phase, because guess what? You have desorption going on. This is where the molecules of water vapor are diffusing out of the product and into the vacuum. So, and then at the end here, you can see where power is low and starting to flatten out, and pressure is low, and your shelf temperatures are high. This is your end of process. You can determine these things by analyzing the data, and then you tweak your process recipe. Now, the more flexibility that you have in the software and the ability for you to change the process recipes and to modify it, like for example, to do slow ramp ups in temperature and heat, to maybe control the pressure if you like. There's two different philosophies for controlling freeze dryers. One is pressure control. That's where the heaters are turning on and off to maintain a certain pressure in your chamber. And there's temperature control, where the heaters are turned on and off to maintain a certain heater temperature. They both have advantages, and they both have disadvantages, right? Everything's a trade-off. So if you want to really learn a lot about how to control your system to get more production out of it in the same, machinery, just reach out to me. I do this all the time. I'm not going to ask you for anything in exchange. I'll just tell you what I know. I kind of consider it one of my missions to help people figure this out, because this information, look, freeze drying's been around for 70 what years, and this kind of information should just be available, and I'm trying to make it available. So that's kind of what I'm doing on these videos. Speaking of which, if you like what this topic is about, please give me a like, or subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It costs you nothing. And it's, in exchange for me continuing to do these kind of things. And it also will help everyone else out there that is struggling with these very same issues as you are. Okay, you can contact me on my website, suntor.com. There's a contact page there. Just reach out to me there. You'll also find my phone number on the bottom of that page, every page. So you can just call me too. Feel free to call or to email or to reach out on my website. And I hope this has been useful. But what you're really going to find useful is if you actually reach out and just talk to me about this, because that's where you really get the information. It's literally too much to start putting in a video. You'll get bored. I know, because I've made them before, and they don't have very long viewership, right? People will just click out because it just doesn't move along. It's a lot of detail, right? But it's really important detail. And if you want to know how your machine works, right, so that you can just tweak it yourself, and almost all my customers get to this point, right? And when I say customers, I'm talking, I actually represent a machine maker, right? A commercial freeze dryer OEM. And so when I say my customers, I mean the people that have bought those machines. When they buy a machine from me, I just help them for in whatever way I can, for however long that they need help. And eventually they get really good at making their own recipes and tweaking their machines and knowing how to do maintenance and, getting the most out of their machine that they can get out. Okay, so thanks very much for tuning in, and I hope to see you in the next one.